Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today, we're going to once again be discussing the third installment of the Fantastic Beasts franchise, Fantastic Beasts: Secrets of Dumbledore. The film just came out in North America a few days ago, and by this point it's come out in theaters across most of the world, so I thought it'd be a good time to release a list of my pros and cons, limiting myself to just 5 of each. If you want a full-scale review and breakdown, I've done that as well. I'll leave a link down in the pinned comment. I'll be alternating pros with cons as to not overly hype up or bog down the experience. Let's get into it. Pro number 1. Actors, characters, and casting. Starting things off on a good note, the first thing that I'd like to point out is that both the acting and casting in the Fantastic Beasts films is excellent. Before this latest film, Jude Law already smashed it as young Dumbledore, as did Eddie Redmayne, who plays Newt Scamander. However, this latest film includes several new main actors to the Fantastic Beasts series, including Mads Mikkelsen and Jessica Williams. Mads Mikkelsen took over for Johnny Depp in the role of Grindelwald, and man, all I can say is that he absolutely killed it. I thought Johnny was good too, but I'm personally of the impression that Mads was made for this role. His seamless performance as Grindelwald was a huge pro for me, and it honestly felt as if he had actually been in the previous films. On a separate note, I felt that the inclusion of new witch Eulalie Hicks was a great choice. Hicks, played by Jessica Williams, is an Ilvermorny professor who ends up helping the protagonists, and there is a certain charm surrounding her character. I think she was a wonderful addition. Con number 1. No Tina, or barely any Tina anyway. When the Secrets of Dumbledore trailers were first coming out, and no one could find Tina Goldstein in them, it was a bit worrisome. However, as time went on, and as I thought about it more, I figured she had to be in the film. I said this to myself because A. Queenie, her sister, is in the trailer, B. She was a large part of the first 2 films, and C. We know that she eventually marries Newt. So, bearing all that in mind, I must say that I was quite surprised when Tina was so very absent from the story. The explanation? Tina was promoted. This doesn't make sense at all. Her sister is in danger. The Wizarding World is in danger, and Newt, her love interest, is in danger. Why on earth wouldn't she be there to help? What could be more important? She shows up at the end, but I'd rather she didn't with that explanation. Regardless of how you feel about Tina's character, this was a big con. Pro number 2, soundtrack. I'm going to keep this one brief as it speaks for itself. The music. James Newton Howard did the soundtrack for The Secrets of Dumbledore, and he absolutely smashed it, capturing the magic perfectly. A poor soundtrack can so profoundly impact the feel of the film, and with a film like Harry Potter, which depicts a magical world, this becomes even more important. No complaints at all from me here. Con number 2, Qilin bows to Dumbledore. In this film, we're introduced to a creature called a Qilin, which holds the special ability to recognize those that are pure of heart. In order to acknowledge that an individual is pure of heart, the Qilin will bow to them, and this is an important part of the election that takes place in the film. At one point, when the real Qilin surfaces, it walks around the election site trying to find a worthy witch or wizard, and finally, it stops at Dumbledore, who it then bows to. This doesn't make sense to me because it's highlighted in the film that barely anyone is entirely pure of heart, and that for the Qilin to bow to you, you've got to basically be a saint. This completely contradicts Dumbledore's character, who we know to have quite a dark history. Dumbledore is mostly good these days, but he's certainly no saint, particularly if he at any time plotted to take over the Wizarding World. I don't quite understand this. Pro 3 brings magic back to the franchise. I mentioned this in my full review, but I want to emphasize that this film felt way more Harry Potter-y. Yes, the Fantastic Beasts films are prequels and separate, important distinctions to be aware of, but that doesn't mean that filmmakers can't bridge the gap between the 2 film franchises. Though still very different feeling than Harry Potter itself, I definitely felt magic in this film that the previous 2 installments were lacking. This was a huge one for me. Con number 3, Nagini. Some people probably didn't even notice this, but Nagini was completely stripped from this film, and there was absolutely no explanation. In the previous film, Nagini became quite close with Credence, and it also started to look like she would become a more prominent character. We know that later on, once the Harry Potter stories timeline sets in, that Nagini becomes a prevalent character, Voldemort's trusty serpentine companion. But when the crimes of Grindelwald ended, Nagini wasn't yet trapped as a snake, the result of her Maledictus curse. So it's confusing that she's just been removed with no in-universe explanation. Pro number 4, expanding the Dumbledore family. I mentioned this in my review as well, but I think it's extremely exciting that one of the most enigmatic wizarding families, the Dumbledores, are having an adjustment made to their family tree. Time will tell what happens to Credence, but this does open up a big can of worms, and it's quite exciting. Con number 4, Queenie's redemption. In the last film, Queenie Goldstein, Tina's sister, has a large argument with her now husband Jacob over his unwillingness to marry her. This leads to her disapparating to Paris, where she ends up having a run-in with Grindelwald's acolytes. Long story short, Queenie makes an extremely misguided decision when she chooses to join Grindelwald in the hopes of building a future where she can be with Jacob. Queenie seemed good up to this point, and she can read minds, so this decision of hers didn't make much sense. This brings us to the Secrets of Dumbledore. Queenie's role as one of Grindelwald's acolytes is essentially to read the mind of Credence, who Grindelwald hopes he will be able to use as a weapon against Dumbledore. Beyond that, Queenie's significance in the film is low. But what I found annoying is just how quickly Queenie was redeemed. It seems like one moment she was evil, and the next she was back with Jacob as if nothing had happened. I don't think that she necessarily deserved to be redeemed quite so quickly, and I wish they focused on this more. Pro number 5, the right direction. Though the Secrets of Dumbledore film is being criticized quite heavily, I do feel as though these films are really beginning to head in the right direction. Where the first film contributed very little to the Harry Potter universe as a whole, we're progressively getting more and more of a sense of what life in the wizarding world was like before Harry Potter, and more importantly, what the foundations of things were like. We're getting deep into the lore, and I'm here for it. Con number 5, Yusuf Kama. In this film, Dumbledore gives all of the protagonists a different task and the ultimate goal of defeating, confusing Grindelwald. One of these protagonists is Yusuf Kama, whose task is basically to infiltrate Grindelwald's people. Yusuf's role in the film seems very insignificant and unimportant, only really helping out at one moment towards the end when he helps Lally and Theseus in defeating Grindelwald's acolytes. Honestly, I think it was just a waste of his character. And that's it for this video. Do you agree with these? What are your pros and cons? Comment down below. Until next time, remember, we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy.